For decades, a Japanese giant built its legend on a nickname Godzilla, crushing world-class rivals and rewriting what a supercar could be. But beneath the myth, Nissan's beloved GT-R quietly stagnated, while rivals raced ahead and the old performance bargain price more than doubled. Did Nissan outsmart the world, turning hype into profit even as the reality fell behind? The answer begins where the Godzilla myth was born. In 1989, a new force arrived on Japanese circuits, the R32 Skyline GT-R. Nissan's engineers had one goal: to dominate Group A touring car racing. They armed the R32 with a 2.6-liter twin-turbo straight-six, advanced all-wheel drive, and a chassis tuned for relentless grip. The result was a car that seemed almost untouchable. Over 4 seasons in the Japanese Touring Car Championship, the R32 GT-R won every single race it entered, 29 victories in a row. Rivals watched as the car surged out of corners, its rear-biased Atessa system turning every exit into a launch pad. The R32 did not just rewrite the results sheet in Japan. In 1991, it crossed the sea to Australia and stunned the field at Bathurst and the Australian Touring Car Championship. Its power and technology forced organizers to rewrite the rulebook, eventually banning turbocharged all-wheel drive altogether. The press struggled for words to describe this new monster. That year, Wheels magazine in Australia settled on a single name: Godzilla. The nickname stuck, capturing the car's mythic presence and its ability to crush established competition. Nissan's motorsport team became legends in their own right, led by chief engineer Naganori Ito. Their relentless pursuit of perfection created a machine that seemed almost unfair. The R32's dominance was not just about raw speed, it was about consistency, reliability, and a technical edge that left spectators and rivals in awe. The numbers told the story: 29 straight Japanese Touring Car Championship wins, Spa 24 Hours glory, and 2 consecutive Bathurst 1000 victories. By the early 1990s, the GT-R was not just a race car, it was a legend, a symbol of Japanese engineering ambition. The Godzilla myth was born on the track, forged in the heat of competition, and amplified by the press. What started as a racing experiment became the foundation for one of the most enduring reputations in automotive history. Arcade screens glowed with the GT-R's silhouette long before most drivers ever saw one in the flesh. In 1997, the first Gran Turismo game landed on PlayStation consoles, and suddenly, the Skyline GT-R became every teenager's dream machine. Polyphony Digital's recreation of the R32, R33, and R34 let millions of players from Tokyo to Toronto push the car to its limits, virtually. The GT-R was not just a car in the game, it was often the secret weapon, the car you saved credits for, the one that could topple European exotics on digital tracks. Over 10 million copies of Gran Turismo sold in its first few years, exporting the GT-R myth worldwide. The legend did not stop at consoles. Hollywood caught on. In 2003, the R34 Skyline GT-R appeared in Too Fast, Too Furious, driven by Paul Walker's character. The film grossed over $236 million globally, and for many, the blue GT-R tearing through Miami streets became the face of Japanese performance. Imports soared, and car meets from California to the UK filled with fans quoting the movie and chasing the dream of owning a Skyline. Music videos, magazines, and tuner culture fanned the flames. The GT-R's image graced the covers of import tuning Bibles, and forums buzzed with stories of midnight runs and quarter-mile times. By the early 2000s, the GT-R was more than a racing legend. It was a pop culture icon. Even those who had never set foot in Japan could recognize the 4 round taillights and the boxy stance. Collectors in the US and Europe hunted down right-hand drive imports, sometimes paying double the price just to own a piece of forbidden fruit. The GT-R's reach extended far beyond the racetrack, carried by pixels, film reels, and the shared language of speed. This global fascination set the stage for what would come next, Nissan's bold move to bring the GT-R to the world stage as a true supercar contender. Kazutoshi Mizuno's vision for the GT-R was never about copying the old formula. He wanted to build something that could outthink, not just outmuscle, the world's best. That meant starting from scratch with the hardware. At the heart of the R35 sat the VR38 DETT, a 3.8-liter twin-turbo V6, assembled by hand in a clean room at Nissan's Yokohama plant. Each engine was hand-built, start to finish by a single master technician, Takumi, whose nameplate sits proudly on the intake plenum. The process was not just for show. Every VR38 was blueprinted and balanced to tolerances that rivaled boutique supercar makers, aiming for both power and durability. But the real leap came in how that power reached the ground. Instead of a traditional layout, the R35 used a rear-mounted transaxle, housing both the 6-speed dual-clutch gearbox and the limited slip differential. This design was rare outside of high-end exotics. By moving the heavy transmission to the back, Nissan balanced the car's weight distribution, improving handling and traction under brutal acceleration. The driveshaft spun at engine speed from the front-mounted V6 to the rear transaxle, a solution that challenged even Nissan's own engineers with vibration and heat management. The electronic brain behind it all was the latest evolution of the Atessa ETS all-wheel drive system. Unlike earlier Skylines, the R35 system constantly monitored yaw, steering angle, throttle, and wheel slip, adjusting torque split in milliseconds. Under normal driving, most power stayed at the rear wheels, but as grip faded or the driver demanded more, the front axle snapped into action, delivering up to 50% of the engine's force forward. It was a setup inspired by the Porsche 959, refined with a new level of software sophistication. The result was a car that could launch from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 3.5 seconds, even in the hands of an amateur. Every piece of the R35's drivetrain was designed for relentless use. The dual-clutch gearbox shifted with a violence that startled first-time drivers, but it could also handle repeated launches and hard track days without complaint. Something rare for the era. Mizuno's team obsessed over cooling, airflow, and even the shape of the oil pans to ensure the car would not wilt under pressure. The engineering was not just about raw numbers, it was about creating a machine that made high performance accessible, predictable, and repeatable, whether on a Tokyo expressway or a German autobahn. By combining hand-built precision with radical architecture, the R35 GT-R arrived as a new kind of supercar. It was not about tradition or nostalgia. It was about proving that Japanese engineering could set the pace for the world's most demanding drivers. The numbers behind the R35 GT-R's debut were not just impressive, they were seismic. At launch, the car delivered 480 horsepower from its hand-built twin-turbo V6, a figure that put it shoulder to shoulder with established European giants. But the real shock came from the stopwatch. Independent testers clocked 0 to 60 in just 3.5 seconds, a time that matched or beat cars costing twice as much. The 6-speed dual-clutch transmission snapped off gear changes in fractions of a second, while the all-wheel drive system clawed for grip with a level of precision usually reserved for race cars. Nissan did not stop at straight-line acceleration. Early press events invited journalists to the Nürburgring, the world's most unforgiving racetrack. In 2008, Nissan announced a lap time of 7 minutes, 29 seconds, an achievement that sent shockwaves through the automotive world. That number was not just a statistic, it was a direct challenge to the Porsche 911 Turbo, a car long considered the king of the ring. Magazines and websites erupted with headlines calling it Japan's supercar killer and the $70,000 giant slayer. Top Gear's James May called it a car that rewrites the rulebook, while Car and Driver declared it the most accessible supercar on the planet. The GT-R's performance did not just live up to the hype, it fueled it. Reviewers described launch control starts as violent, with the car rocketing forward so fast that drivers struggled to keep up. Quarter-mile times landed in the low 11-second range, putting the GT-R in rare company. The car's grip on a skid pad topped 1G, and braking from 70 miles per hour to 0 happened in just 145 feet. These were numbers that, until then, belonged to the world's most exclusive exotics. The media frenzy was not just about raw speed. The GT-R's price tag, just under $70,000 in the United States, was a revelation. For years, supercar performance had been the domain of six-figure machines. Now, Nissan was offering a car that could accelerate faster, corner better, and brake harder than the best from Germany and Italy for half the money. Early buyers flocked to dealerships and waiting lists formed overnight. Forums buzzed with stories of owners embarrassing Ferraris at track days and Porsches on back roads. The myth of Godzilla, once born on Japanese racetracks, now had hard evidence to back it up. Every headline, every test number, and every magazine cover added fuel to the fire. The GT-R was not just a car, it was a phenomenon. Its 7 minutes 29 seconds Nürburgring lap became a benchmark, a target for rivals, and a badge of honor for owners. In the years that followed, Nissan would chase even faster times and higher power figures, but the world had already taken notice. The numbers had spoken, and for a moment it seemed like nothing could touch Godzilla. With the world watching, Nissan charted a careful course for the GT-R's evolution. After the shockwaves of its launch, the updates began to follow a pattern, measured, deliberate, and always incremental. In 2011, the first significant revision nudged output to 530 horsepower, thanks to revised turbo boost and a retuned engine control unit. Each tweak was a headline, but the core remained the same: the VR38 IDE-TT engine, the transaxle, the steel-intensive chassis. The numbers inched upward, not leapt. By 2017, the GT-R's official power rating reached 565 horsepower. Nissan called it a facelift, with subtle aero changes and a stiffer body shell, but the platform underneath was familiar. The Nismo edition introduced earlier pushed the envelope further: 600 horsepower, carbon fiber trim, and a claimed Nürburgring lap of 7 minutes 8 seconds. Yet, even here, the gains were measured in tenths, not revolutions. Independent testers struggled to match Nissan's lap claims, and the car's weight, now over 3,800 pounds, remained a stubborn obstacle. The 2020 model year brought the last major bump: 600 horsepower for the Nismo, revised turbos borrowed from GT3 racing, and lighter wheels. The price tag soared, but the performance curve flattened. No new lap records, no radical chassis overhaul, no move to hybrid technology like rivals from Porsche and McLaren. The GT-R's formula, power, grip, and digital control had once set the pace. Now it was being refined, not reinvented. Across nearly 2 decades, the GT-R's timeline reads like a series of cautious steps rather than bold leaps. Each new model year offered more power, sharper responses, and new badges, but the fundamental architecture remained anchored in the past. The world of supercars moved quickly, but Nissan's Godzilla seemed content to walk, not run, into the future. Power numbers kept climbing, but the GT-R's mass became an anchor that no amount of engineering could fully overcome. By 2017, curb weight had crept past 3,800 pounds, a figure that put it closer to Grand Tourers than lithe supercars. The steel-intensive chassis, designed for durability and all-weather confidence, brought with it a stubborn heft. Every year, new safety systems, luxury features, and reinforcements nudged the scales higher. Even as the VR38 DETT engine gained horsepower and the electronics sharpened their responses, the raw physics of moving that much weight around a corner set hard boundaries. Lap times at the Nürburgring told the story in numbers. After the headline grabbing 7 minutes 29 seconds in 2008 and the controversial 7 minutes 8 seconds claim from the 2014 Nismo, progress flatlined. Later updates boasted more power and stiffer suspensions, but independent testers struggled to find meaningful gains on the stopwatch. The car's mass soaked up every improvement, turning what once felt like a supercar killer into a machine locked in a battle with its own inertia. Rivals took a different path. Porsche, McLaren, and Ferrari poured resources into carbon fiber tubs, active aero, and hybrid systems, shedding weight and adding agility. The GT-R, meanwhile, doubled down on its original formula, refining rather than reinventing. On paper, 565 or even 600 horsepower should have delivered a new level of performance. In reality, the lap times proved stubborn, with the car's weight overwhelming its brakes and tires during extended track sessions. Owners and testers reported that while the GT-R could still deliver a blistering lap in the right conditions, repeated runs exposed the limits of its mass. The result was a plateau. No matter how much power Nissan found, the GT-R's curb weight kept it from reclaiming the performance headlines. The numbers, once a source of shock and awe, now revealed the ceiling imposed by physics, a ceiling that rivals, armed with lighter platforms and new technology, had already broken through. British journalist Richard Meaden spent decades chasing lap times and dissecting the world's most coveted performance cars. When he first drove the R35 GT-R at Bedford Autodrome in 2008, the numbers startled even him. The car lapped just 0.4 of a second behind a Ferrari Enzo, an achievement that seemed almost unthinkable for a Nissan. Meaden described the experience as miraculous control and blinding pace, a machine that did not just challenge established supercars, but made their price tags look absurd. Yet, as the years passed, that early shock faded into something more familiar. Evo magazine's long-term testers noted the R35's relentless grip and brutal acceleration, but also observed a pattern. Each update brought incremental improvements, not transformation. The car's character, once defined by its ability to rewrite expectations, became anchored in the same formula, refined, but never reinvented. Meaden's reflections on the R32 echoed here. Turn-in agility followed by power on corner exit made it formidable, but the R35's evolution never recaptured that sense of revolution. Instead, it offered measured gains, more power, sharper responses, but always within the boundaries set at launch. Independent reviewers echoed this verdict. The 2014 Nismo's Nürburgring lap time of 7 minutes, 8.679 seconds was headline-grabbing, but persistent rumors about non-standard setups and unverified conditions cast a shadow over the claim. Later models, despite boasting 565 or even 600 horsepower, failed to produce new lap records or shatter old benchmarks. The car's mass, now approaching 2 tons, dulled the edge that once set it apart. Owners and journalists alike described a machine that remained fast, but no longer felt like the disruptor it once was. Evo's 2025 farewell called the R35 unique, talented, and enduring, but also acknowledged that it bowed out without an R36 successor in sight. The supercar world had moved on, embracing lighter materials, hybrid systems, and generational leaps. The GT-R, once the upstart, now stood as a monument to a different era, respected but no longer feared. The expert consensus was clear: Nissan's Godzilla remained a legend, but its reign as a supercar killer had quietly come to an end. The stopwatch never lies, and by the late 2010s, the numbers started painting a different picture for the GT-R. When Nissan's flagship first stunned the world with a 7-minute 29-second Nürburgring lap, it seemed untouchable for the price. But rivals did not stand still. Porsche's 911 Turbo S, once the target, evolved from the 997 generation to the 991 and then the 992, each leap bringing sharper acceleration, faster shifting, and less weight. By 2021, the 992 Turbo S posted a verified 6-minute 43.9-second lap at the Nordschleife, over 25 seconds quicker than the GT-R Nismo's best official run. That gap is not just a number, it is a chasm in the world of high-performance cars. McLaren's 720S, launched in 2017, took a different approach. With a carbon fiber monocoque and a curb weight of just 2,645 pounds, the 720S delivered 710 horsepower and a lap time of 7 minutes 8.34 seconds, essentially matching the GT-R Nismo's controversial 2014 time, but with less power and nearly 1,200 pounds less mass. The McLaren's power-to-weight advantage translated to sharper cornering, shorter braking, and relentless acceleration, traits that became the new standard among supercars. Meanwhile, the GT-R's own curb weight crept steadily upward. Early R35s tipped the scales at around 3,830 pounds. By 2024, the T-Spec and Nismo models approached 4,000 pounds. Even as output climbed to 600 horsepower, the extra mass blunted any real performance gains. Independent testers noted that while the GT-R could still deliver a blistering lap in ideal conditions, repeated runs exposed the limits of its brakes and tires, with heat soak and fade setting in faster than in lighter, more advanced rivals. The added weight erased much of the advantage the car once had. Technology too moved on. Porsche introduced hybrid assists and active aerodynamics, improving both lap times and everyday usability. McLaren's carbon tubs and Ferrari's hybrid V8s redefined what a modern supercar could be. The GT-R, once the disruptor, now found itself outpaced by cars that were lighter, more agile, and, crucially, more efficient at translating power into lap time. The shift in technology left the GT-R behind. The cold data tells the story. Where Godzilla once hunted giants, it now found itself chasing shadows. The lap time gap, the weight disadvantage, and the absence of breakthrough technology all combined to erode the parity Nissan once claimed. The benchmark had moved, and the GT-R, for all its incremental improvements, could no longer keep up. The world's best had pulled away, and the numbers left little room for nostalgia. Sticker shock arrived with the GT-R's first American appearance. In 2009, the car launched at $69,850, a price that seemed almost impossible for the performance on offer. Early buyers called it a steal, a supercar for the price of a sports sedan. But the honeymoon was brief. Within months, the base price jumped to $76,840. By 2011, it had climbed to $84,060. The pattern was clear. Each year brought another increase, driven not just by inflation but by a shift toward exclusivity. The turning point came in 2015 with the Nismo edition. Suddenly, the GT-R was no longer a bargain but a contender in the supercar league, with a sticker price over $100,000. The base model kept rising, $110,000 by 2017, $113,540 in 2023, and $121,090 for the 2024 premium. The latest Nismo now starts at $210,740 before options or fees. That is more than triple the original price, far outpacing inflation and even the steady climb of the Porsche 911 Turbo. The GT-R's reputation as the people's supercar faded as the numbers grew. The data is stark. Over just 15 years, the GT-R's manufacturer suggested retail price soared by 73%, while US inflation rose about 58%. Even after adjusting for the cost of living, the increase stands out. Special editions like the T-Spec at $140,990 and the Nismo now over $220,000 with Destination pushed the GT-R into a price class once reserved for Italian exotics. The era of outpacing Ferraris for half the cost is over. Ownership costs followed the same trajectory. Insurance companies classify the GT-R as high risk and high value. Annual premiums for a driver in their 30s can easily exceed $5,000, not including registration, taxes, or the cost of specialized repairs. Routine maintenance, such as oil changes, fluid flushes, and brake jobs, commands a premium, and the dual clutch transmission, while advanced, is expensive to service. Over 5 years, maintenance and repairs can total $23,000 for a standard GT-R and more than $35,000 for a Nismo. Add in depreciation, and the 5-year cost of ownership approaches $150,000. Resale values once softened the blow, with early R35s retaining about 2/3 of their value after 7 years. But as new prices climbed, used values followed. Today, even well-used base models rarely fall below $80,000, and limited Nismos fetch $250,000 or more at auction. The GT-R's myth as a bargain faded, replaced by the reality of a luxury reserved for those willing to pay the price. Inside the walls of a performance workshop, the myth of the GT-R's infinite potential runs into hard reality. Shop floors are crowded with R35 cars in various states of undress, some stripped to bare shells, others waiting for the next round of upgrades. For years, the promise was simple: bolt on bigger turbos, tune the ECU, and the GT-R would reward you with 4-figure dyno sheets. It is not uncommon for these builds to chase 1,000 horsepower or more, fueled by stories of drag strip dominance and YouTube glory runs. But the deeper the modifications go, the more the platform's limits become clear. The VR30A DETT, hand-assembled and robust in stock form, starts to show its age at these power levels. Cylinder liners crack, head studs stretch, and factory pistons give up under relentless boost. Tuners know the drill. Closed deck blocks, forged internals, and custom head gaskets become mandatory. Each step up in power brings a new layer of complexity and cost. A basic 1,000 horsepower build can swallow $40,000 in parts and labor before factoring in the inevitable teething issues. The transaxle, once praised for its innovative rear-mounted layout, quickly becomes a weak link. At stock output, the dual-clutch gearbox shifts with authority. With double the torque, clutch packs slip, gears shear, and the bell housing rattles itself loose. Upgraded clutches and billet baskets are just the start. Full rebuilds can run $15,000 or more, and even then, reliability is never guaranteed. Tuners often keep spare gearboxes on hand, knowing that a single hard launch can spell disaster. Chassis reinforcement is another hidden cost. The R35 has a steel-intensive structure designed for grand touring comfort and crash safety, and it was not meant to handle the stress of repeated 4-figure launches. Subframe bushings deform, suspension arms twist, and the all-wheel drive systems, electronic controls struggle to keep up. Aftermarket braces, solid mounts, and upgraded drive shafts are standard fare for high-power builds. Each fix reveals another stress point, another part pushed past its original design envelope. These realities are not a secret among the tuning community. Shop owners speak candidly about the balancing act between headline numbers and real-world reliability. The GT-R's reputation for limitless tuning is built on a foundation of constant maintenance, deep pockets, and a willingness to accept that every extra horsepower brings new risks. For many, the dream of a 1,000 horsepower street car is tempered by the knowledge that the next failure is always lurking just around the corner. The car that once promised affordable supercar speed now demands supercar-level investment to chase the upper limits of performance. On a quiet suburban street, a longtime GT-R owner flips through a stack of service invoices, each one a reminder of what loyalty really costs. He bought his R35 in 2012, drawn in by the promise of everyday supercar speed and the legend that stretched from Bathurst to the Nürburgring. For years, the car delivered launch control thrills, track day stories, and the kind of presence that turned heads at every gas station. But as the odometer climbed, so did the bills. Insurance premiums spiked after the first renewal. The company flagged the VIN and recalculated the risk, $5,200 a year for full coverage, more than his neighbor's Porsche 911. Routine maintenance, once shrugged off as the price of entry, started to add up. Oil changes cost $300 at the dealership. Transmission fluid flushes ran $400 every 35,000 miles. When the dual-clutch gearbox developed a rattle at 52,000 miles, the repair estimate landed at $13,000, more than the down payment on a new sedan. He scanned the forums, hoping for a cheaper solution, but the consensus was grim. The R35's performance came with a hidden tax. The pattern repeated with every high-mileage GT-R. Tires wore out in under 10,000 miles, often costing $2,000 for a full set. Brake rotors and pads, designed for repeated high-speed stops, needed replacement twice as often as mainstream sports cars. Over 7 years, maintenance and repairs totaled $17,400. That did not include upgrades or the inevitable tinkering that comes with owning a car whose myth is built on tunability. There is pride in ownership, but also a sense of resignation. On enthusiast forums, the mood has shifted. Early posts brimmed with stories of outgunning Ferraris and Porsches for half the price. Now, threads fill with questions about warranty claims, transmission failures, and the search for independent shops willing to tackle complex repairs. The phrase Godzilla tax circulates, half joke, half warning. Yet, for all the frustration, the emotional pull remains. Owners gather at weekend meets, trading war stories and comparing maintenance logs. The GT-R is still a badge of honor, but one that comes with a sobering price tag. The reality is clear. The days of the affordable supercar are gone, replaced by a machine that demands as much in upkeep as it once did in raw performance. For those who stay loyal, it is not just about speed anymore. It is about the willingness to shoulder the cost of keeping a legend alive. Today, the GT-R's price rivals that of true exotics, yet its core engineering has remained nearly unchanged since 2007. As supercar technology accelerates, Nissan's icon stands at a crossroads, its myth outpacing its evolution. The GT-R now asks buyers to pay for legend, not innovation. In a market obsessed with progress, nostalgia alone is an expensive fuel. What is next depends on whether Nissan dares to reinvent, or whether it will simply preserve its fading giant. Share your thoughts below.